Hey gang, Bison here. Just want to show you guys something. This is an old cleaver. Now I acquired this from an old friend of mine who died. He was in his very late 90s, shy of 100. And this was in a box of tools of his that I acquired. Now, he didn't use this, obviously, for chopping meat. Well, maybe at one point in time he did, or he had used this out to work outside in the field, in his garden. It's pretty heavy. I don't know what the weight of it is, but I'm going to attempt to restore it using an angle grinder and a wire wheel. I have never restored anything before. And I know when I'm done, it's not going to look anywhere near it was brand new, but I want to clean it up a bit, adjust the shape to neaten up the shape that, as you can see, it's all beat up. He used to use this for chopping wood, kind of, batoning stuff, cutting wood chunks up for masonry projects he would work on, I guess, for when you put the guides and the rope. I don't know the terms, not a mason. And for hammering in posts in the garden and various things. He was the type of a man who just used whatever he had at hand to get the project done. And you can see at some point in time he had made new handles for it out of some wood. I can't see how these were the original, but I don't know. I don't know what the make or brand that is of this old cleaver. Again, he was just about 100 years old. And who knows how long he had this. Could have brought it back from Italy or not. And you can see, obviously, if this was the original handle, it was probably riveted or had pins at some point, and I replaced it with some flathead screws with nuts. Now, I want to take the handles off, sand them a little, reshape them, maybe stain them, and attempt to reuse his holes and original screws just to keep it the way he had it and just make it look a little bit newer. And maybe I'll incorporate this into my bushcraft equipment for batoning and splitting stuff. I think it's very cool. So I don't know how much of this progress I'm going to show. Maybe, little video clips as I go along the way to show the progress. I don't know how much the actual restore I'll show, because again, I'm not an expert, so I got to figure out what I'm doing before I do it and show you, if that makes sense. All right, stand by for progress. All right, so I just unscrewed the handles. Here's a look at it with the handle off. Here's a look at the handles. So now I'm going to attempt to put it in the vise and hit it with the angle grinder. Once I get that situated, I'll show you that. Here are the screws.
Alright gang, Bison back. I have a makeshift setup here with a little vise. I have the old cleaver clamped down, and we're going to attempt to grind off some of the rust. I have a 60-bit grit grinding wheel, that's all I have. In these days and times, can't run around to all these different stores to get supplies, so I'm making do with what I have. I only venture out for absolute necessities like food for myself and the family. So we have our safety glasses, and we'll see how we do. Let's do this into position.
not bad. We're going to continue the same process overall with the whole thing. And then maybe I'll go over with some light sandpaper. And then we'll see what happens. And then at one point, when we're done cleaning up the rust, there's a lot of nicks and chips in the blade. I don't know if that's coming out in the video here. Yeah, it definitely is. We have to hit this with a file and try and get an edge back on it. I mean, it's not going to be brand new, obviously. It's going to be dark with little burrs in it. But if I'm going to use this for like a crafting application and in the field, this would be perfect. It's pretty smooth now. You can still feel the indentations of where the really rust ate in, but this is probably, I don't know, if I'm guessing 60 plus years old. Alright gang, I'm going to continue what I'm doing. Stand by. Alright, so I did the whole thing with the grinding wheel, both sides all around, tried to shape it up a little bit. Got a little edge going here now. It is slightly sharper than it was. A lot of this stuff where it's dark and a little pitted, nothing you could do too much about that. So after I grinded it down, I didn't show this part, but I did wipe it down and soak it overnight with some WD-40, and then I went over it with the palm sander with some heavy grit, medium grit sandpaper. Now I'm going to give it a once over with some fine grit sandpaper, and then once I go over it with the fine grit and sandpaper, I'm going to talk about what I want to do with the handles. I also have been using the drill with a little wire wheel to get into little nooks and crannies where you couldn't get in with the sander too well or the angle grinder, so I was doing that. So I'm going to just go over it a little bit now with the palm sander, both sides, handles, and then at that point we'll move on to working on the handle, and then we'll work on putting on an edge. And then my last attempt, if I have enough material, which I may here, I've got screws somewhere and a nice big sheet of Kydex where maybe I'll make a little Kydex cover for it, so when it is sharpened up it'll be safe in my gear, so no one gets hurt. So let's do a little sanding and then we'll take it from that point. Flip it over and we'll continue. I don't know if you can see this, but there is some, I guess you would call it pitting, where the rust ate into the metal, but there's really nothing we can do about that. So we'll do a little more on this side, and then I'll do the handles, and then we'll move on from there. Alright, so I'm going to continue this a little bit more, and we'll be back. I've got the original screws here. Like I said originally, I want to keep everything preserved the way this man had it before I came into possession of it. So I'm going to use all the original hardware. I'm just going to try and touch the screws up a bit, get some of the rust off with the wire wheel. So our screws look a bit better. Focus. Got a lot of the rust off. I'll try and touch it up some more. There we go. And now I'm just trying to clean up the little nuts a bit on some fine grit sandpaper. It's coming off nice. Pretty tedious process to get all the corners, but it's okay. Yeah, we're getting there. Getting there. So with the screws cleaned up a bit now, there's one hole that kind of stinks, which is this one. I'm going to try and clean it up a hair with a countersink, and then I'm going to bolt it together with the existing screws. Try and even it up as best I can, and then I'll shape it with the palm sander. And then once it's slightly better shaped and sanded, I'll hit it with some stain and maybe some poly. Alright, so let's see what happens. Don't want to take too much out because I want it to bite, and hope if I get it tight enough the nut will sink in a bit. I'm not going to have a nice little clean hole like this, where this one actually took the shape of the nut. This was just a little jagged, and it's not going to be nice, but that's the charm of the whole thing, so I'm actually fine with it. Yeah, it's a little bit cleaner now, so moving on. Alright, so it's together now. I'm going to keep it together and just go over the top and the front and the bottom here and the back with the palm sander. Then once it's kind of a bit even, then I'll take it apart and do the rest by hand with a finer grit. And then we'll move on to some stain and poly. And then we'll revisit the actual cleaver itself, polish it up, get an edge on it, put it all together, etc. All right. Not going to go too crazy, just wanted the shape a little bit better. There's a lot of like dings and imperfection on it from when, the gentleman who I got it from, who means a lot to me, was using it. And I just want to keep that look. So I'll just flip it over here, even off a little bit here on the bottom, and that's really going to be it. I'm not going to go too insane because I like the used look. Alright, so I took the handles apart, and now I'm just going to lightly go over them with fine grit sandpaper with the palm sander. Like I said, I'm not going to go too crazy. I'm going to do the other side now, but I want to keep a lot of the imperfections on it. Going to wipe them off, clean them up, and then I'll stain them. Alright, here's a look at the handles. I lightly sanded them. And I wiped them off with a damp rag. That's why they look a little dark. So I'm going to get out my stain and hit these off with a little stain, and then we'll do a little poly. You know, with the sanding and the cleaning down, there's still some remnants of the old finish to slide in from perfections from the use over the years, which again I said I want to preserve. And then I've uncovered some of the old grain, and hopefully this stain will bring some of that out, along with the imperfections. That's the look I'm going for. Alright, gang, stand by. Alright, so it's all wiped off and dry. We're using Olympic Elite woodland oil. The color is Kona Brown, K-O-N-A. It's what I have on hand. You know, during these crazy times, we can't run out to the hardware stores to get things, so we use what we have. And that's fine with me, because I do have a ton of it. So let's put a little bit on here. A little thick. Again, I am not a professional at staining nor restoration of cleavers. This is obvious, but I'm just having fun. And that's what this is all about. All you professional wood finishers out there are probably cringing at the different directions of application. What are you going to do? Again, this is not a masterpiece. This is just for fun. And we'll see what happens. We'll let this dry up. See if we want to do a second coat or a third coat. I really like the color. Let's zoom in a little bit, and we will be back. Alright, while the stain is drying and we evaluate a second or third coat, I'm just going to go over the blade area a little bit with some of this Simichrome polish. I'll do both sides. We're not going to really get, you know, showroom finish here, gang. But it's going to be what it's going to be. Compared to what it was, it'll be fantastic. Stuff coming off there, which is nice to see. If I had a professional buffing wheel, that would be a big help. But we don't. So this is it. Probably using a little bit more than I should, but look what's coming off. So now we'll just wipe this side off, buff it a bit, and we'll do the other side. Getting there. All right, gang. I did like a second and third coat here, so we're still drying with the stain. But I've been tinkering around, and I apologize for not showing the process completely. Making a Kydex case for it. This is my first attempt. It is a little rough, but I'm still working at it. I had a little screw kit here, and the screws and the washers that they go into were a little. They were not. What's what I'm looking for? They weren't not deep, but shallow enough. I'm sorry for the thickness of this. So I had some rubber grommets for like plugging holes. I'll show you one in a second. That I had to cut in half and kind of sand down a little bit. You can see how I put them in there to kind of make it tighten down, a little tight. That's temporary. Once the world changes and I can go wander a hardware store like we used to, I'll get proper rubber grommets. Let me just pause here and show you what I used. I went a while back to the world famous Harbor Freight and got a rubber grommet set. Can't go wrong. So I used these little guys up here. Pretty much I took them out, cut them in half, sand them down a little bit, and that's what I used to get the screws to tighten down. So I made a line up top here if you can see it. I'm going to warm it up and give it a cut, and then just file it down a little bit, and that'll kind of be the case. And then once our handles are dry, I'll poly them and attach them, and then we'll go to sharpening. Stand by. All right, so the third coat of stain has dried, and in the meantime I'm still working on the Kydex sheath. I've shaped it and trimmed it, and this is how it looks now. Let me see if we can back up a hair. It has a nice tight fit. And it locks in nicely. So we're going to put a coat of poly on it, take a break, let it dry, and then once we get 1 or 2 coats of poly on it, coats of poly that is, we'll assemble the handle, and then we'll take a look at the edge. All right, progress. It's probably going on a little too thick, but that's okay. I want a nice coat on it to seal it. I don't know if it's a great idea doing it on a folded up garbage bag, but we shall see. All right, gang. I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll see the results when it's dry. We'll see if it needs another coat or two. Alright gang, so we're looking at the cleaver here with the Kydex sheath. But what I noticed what it was when I neglected to check was when the handles that are now dry go back on, they're over the Kydex slightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just line them up where it's supposed to screw in, draw a little line with the pencil, and then cut it out. Grind it out, that is, with the Dremel. So let's see how we can do this here. Those are the holes lined up right there. I hope the pencil works on this. It should. I don't want to do a Sharpie and now get Sharpie on the handle. I mean, it is going to be used for outdoor stuff, so I'm really not that too worried. Okay, there we go. We can see the line. So we can see where I need to grind it out slightly. And we'll do both sides, obviously. So let's see what happens there. Now we'll just shape the bottom. Looks good, let's check it out. So now if we take this side, it may need to come out a little bit more here, because obviously the wood is, these handles were handmade years ago. Yep, they both sides need to be grounded out ever so slightly more. Alright, did some more fine tuning. And the holes lining up. And we're good. Good on both sides. Alright, now we'll assemble it. Alright, gang, so she's all together. Handles on. This screw sticks out a little bit. I may grind it down a bit. Take it out, cut it down, and put it back in. So, we made our notches here in the Kydex. Fits nicely with the handle. Here's a look at the blade. Now we're just going to touch it up, sharpen her up, and then maybe we'll do some testing outside. All right. So, I've been, for the last half hour or so, going back and forth with this on a little sharpening system here, diamond steel and coarse and fine, different stones going back and forth, trying to get a nice edge on it. It is very sharp now. I was just playing around hacking a piece of 2x4, and you know, with the edge I put on it and the weight behind it, it does a good job. So I'm going to upload part 1 now, the restoration, or I don't know if you want to call it restoration, because it's not restored. You know, it's not factory. We can just say cleaning it up with an old hatchet for bushcraft and survival use, outdoor tool, whatever. So there it is. I'm going to upload part 1 now, and maybe tomorrow, if it's nice, we'll go out and do a chopping test. And we'll see what happens. Alright, gang. Thanks for watching. Bison out.